Muted.
Our class today, it is on the client meeting follow-up process, and our expert that we have for the class is Carla Doss. She's going to be our content expert, and she's with the Peterson practice. The structure of their practice is they have one advisor, 2 AFA/case managers, and then 2 staff, an administrative assistant and a business processor, which Carla would be the business processor. And moving on, I wanted to share what the purpose of our call is today. So you guys have taken your time out of a really busy day, I'm sure, and so we want to, we don't want to waste an hour of your time. We want to make sure it's valuable and has purpose. So the reason for having this call is that we want to discuss how important it is to have a consistent process in place for meeting follow-up, and the ultimate goal is to make sure that promises made to clients are fulfilled, that all business processing and any type of tasks are being completed, and that everything's properly documented. So we've got to meet those compliance requirements, and then ultimately to make sure that compensation is received. So what is meeting follow-up? It is basically what we just said, completing all necessary steps after a client meeting takes place. And that includes placing trades, number 1, completing meeting notes, assigning tasks, posting and uploading notes, submitting documents, completing the CMOT, tracking or processing the business, and then verifying compensation. What I'd like to do next is get into our content experts process, and rather than me comment through all of these, I will bring the bullets up on the slide, and I would like Carla, if you wouldn't mind, Carla Doss, to kind of share what your team does. So first step in their process is completing trades. And so everybody could read what's here, but if you would just share how you go about handing those off and getting them completed.
Okay. Our advisor, Stephen Peterson, hands off the complete file to me, and then I take from it the trades that I know need to be done right away, and I do them, and then the rest of the stuff that doesn't need to be done right away gets put into business processing. And if he's out of the office, he calls in. If there's any trades, he calls right after the appointment from his cell phone or wherever he's at.
Perfect. And then Steve types the meeting notes directly in SmartPad, correct?
Correct.
And then, he's pretty good about doing it the day of or the day following the meeting?
Yes.
Generally speaking, we can say for our advisors, right?
Yes.
So I would like to actually pause and take a poll right now. I'm interested to know how you guys are handling meeting notes. So I'm going to ask that question. So if you wouldn't mind choosing which of the multiple choice tend to be yours. All right. So we have, let me make sure you guys are able to see the responses. All right. That's not what I wanted. Okay. So we have about 25% of you that are putting meeting notes into the tool on Connect, and then the rest are split close to 40% each of putting them directly into SmartPad or using CopyTalk or some other type of dictation. what, if anyone would be willing to speak to that, what has determined which method you use, and can you share some of your successes in that? Maybe someone who answered Copy Talk and someone who answered on meeting notes, since Carla has touched on SmartPad. Anybody that wants to share?
This is Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me?
What do you guys? Yes, I can. What do you guys use?
We're a Copy Talk practice.
Okay.
The advisor dictates his notes into Copy Talk. I can't imagine him typing in the meeting notes. And so he dictates them into Copy Talk, and then we get an email and just copy and paste that into SmartPad. So.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So it ultimately gets to SmartPad, but we just get an email from the service, copy and paste, put it in SmartPad.
Okay, perfect. What about someone who is putting their notes into the meeting notes on Connect? Would someone be willing to speak to that? Maybe if you wouldn't mind answering the question of who puts the meeting notes into Connect in your practice for those who are doing it? Does the advisor enter those? Is there a case manager entering them? Just wanted to touch on some different ways that it can be handled.
This is Tara. Advisor will, write some notes up, and we have, they're called the green sheets that we call them, that have things that have happened during the meeting. And then the paraplanner, Roberta, she puts them into Connect and writes up a summary letter through that Connect, and then we send that letter out to the client after.
Okay. All right, perfect. Just a point for everyone to remember is that if the meeting notes are put into Contact Manager as an attachment, like whether it's a PDF of the meeting notes from Connect or a Word document that's a summary letter, if they're not either typed directly into SmartPad or text copied and pasted into SmartPad like Georgia shared, directly from an email, and so you've got the text itself in SmartPad. If it's an attachment, it has to also be uploaded to OFM, so just for compliance requirements for books and records. So just keep that in mind, and that's with any attachment, not just meeting notes. All right. Let's go ahead and Carla, Carla Doss, what is your next step after you complete the notes? What does the advisor do with, and I've got it on the screen, but would you speak to the cover sheet and what happens from that point?
Okay, yes. The cover sheet is technically started way before the appointment and has all of our information on it that we, all the recommendations are written on there, and the advisor generally writes okay or no next to them. And when he's completely done typing the notes, he gives that sheet off to our administrator, and that's when she scans it, and we attach that to the note he typed in Contact Manager and put it in OFM, and she completes her stuff on CMONT after that.
Perfect. And then you mentioned the assignment of tasks to the trackers when you're placing trades. So would you share a little bit more about what prompts the trackers to have tasks added by you versus Kaylin, which is their administrator?
She is adding them more now. She didn't at the beginning because she was a brand new employee to Ameriprise, and it's her first job ever. So she didn't know any of the lingo, language, abbreviations, any of that when we started with key management and when she started here. So she's getting more into that, but I do add most of the stuff on there when we take the file apart right after the appointment. And then she more goes in there and makes sure that we didn't miss anything because she's the ultimate one who reads Steve's typed note.
Okay, great. And then you, Carla, are the one that's reviewing all the paperwork. And tell us about your steps from there with your folder that you use and the scanning and all, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay. If there's an application or something that needs to go to e-delivery, I take it, make sure it's completed, signed by client advisor, dated, all that good stuff, and I put it in her folder. The admin scans it and submits it, and we also put on business processing to follow up to make sure that it was processed by home office.
Cool. And I found when I was talking to Carla about their process, I found the timing of when they mark the meeting done in Contact Manager pretty interesting. So would you share about that? What prompts that?
We mark the meeting done in Contact Manager after the weekly recap meeting, and when we mark it completed in there, we do it after that, because then if the advisor thinks of something during the weekly recap meeting that wasn't in his note or wasn't on that front cover sheet, it's caught then, and we make sure that last task may be done before we mark it in Contact Manager is done.
Any comments from anybody or questions about taking that method with it as far as waiting till after recap is done? All right. So then your follow-up and next steps, everything's on the trackers now, and now there's the follow-up to see did they happen. So you had shared that the majority of that is done by one of the case managers. Anything that you want to elaborate on that related to his follow-up on the items?
Mainly, he does the follow-up because he did it in the past, and he is one of the AFAs here, and he does the follow-up. I think some of that is because so much of what I took over recently, it keeps him in the loop of what's going on because he gets a lot of the phone calls, but it's mainly because he did it before.
Okay, for years, right?
Yeah, he's been here like 18 years.
Yeah. So, and it's what has worked, so if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of thing, right?
Yes.
All right. And I did ask Carla about their verifying compensation because they found a very limited number of errors, and I've talked to the case manager she was referring to and the advisor on this in the past as well, but they just made kind of an executive team decision to stop, and ultimately came from the advisor, to stop comparing everything, all the actions taken against the comp report from home office because they weren't finding a lot of errors on it, very, very, very few. So I have another poll question for you. I would like to know, does your team verify compensation? So just a yes or a no. All right. So we have about 60-40, yes and no. What I would like to just mention regarding that is that one thing you might want to watch for in looking at it, and it's something that might prompt you to check compensation for verification, is to look at the fees that are charged, because it's not, I'm sure there's not somebody sitting in home office going, ooh, let's double charge fees. It's not an intentional error, but I have come across with several practices over time the knowledge that there have been double charging of some fees. So maybe there's an advisor ID and a team ID, and for some reason something on that team ID gets charged twice, or it got charged to the advisor and charged to the team, or things like that. So that's something to watch for in the verification of compensation. Has anybody else run into anything of the 60% of you that said, yes, you're verifying? Does anybody have any examples of anything you've come across in it that has prompted you to make sure you keep verifying? All right, if you think of something afterward, feel free to share it. We'll have an open question time or comment time. All right, and then Carla Doss, keep clarifying that for which Carla. Tell us what you do if you get a NIGO. How does that work in your practice?
Well, first we have, as you see there, we have the Outlook rules set up under Steve's email, and we periodically add them as we come across more that are hitting his email instead of mine. As we get those, we deal with them as I get them in my email. Now that Status Manager is there in the chat, we tend to use that a lot more than we use calling home office.
Perfect. So I'm going to do one more poll question, last one for today, I promise. And I wanted to find out if your team uses Outlook rules to automatically forward, whether it's NIGOs or other pertinent emails.
I'm not really sure what Outlook rules are, actually.
Perfect. That's why I wanted to ask. That's why I wanted to bring it up. So let me show you the results. So we've got, of those who responded, 60-40 again on those using Outlook rules versus not. So I brought it up specifically as a poll question so that I could let you know that if you are interested in them, you can ask for training on it in your production meeting. And what they are in a nutshell is you're able to go into your Outlook email and set up a rule. As for example, if the subject line says action needed, like in a NIGO, that you tell it to, when it says action needed, always forward to this person. As an example, there's multiple things you can do in the rules, but it allows it to go to the person who needs to take the next step on it. You don't have to wait for the advisor to go through his email and forward it to you, or for the advisor to, you have to question her or whatever and say, have you received anything on this? Because I'm not seeing anything on this. And so it's something that lets it happen automatically. Those who use it have, and Carla Doss can speak to this, have found pretty good success in it when it's set up appropriately. So
yes, we actually have we actually have different different phrases going to like 3 different people within the office. Like the licensing and stuff goes to one person the administrator who handles that, and like if it says switch form in it, that goes to the case manager. So we have it set up. We have it set up a lot actually.
Gotcha. So you've got it drilled down. So switch form, so it looks in the subject line. Does it look in the subject line for switch form, or how did you set up to have it watch for a switch form?
I don't remember honestly. When we get an email when Steve gets an email, we look at it and then we'll go and add another rule as we see things that come across. And I can remember.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt that last thought of yours.
No, that's okay. I was done.
Okay. So that's an idea, is as you see the need, you can build additional rules based on the content of that email that you're seeing the need. Like she mentioned licensing. That's another one. Those can go to the person who is overseeing licensing, who has that role for your team, to make sure that they're triggered to follow up with the advisor or whoever the licensed person is. All right, great. Any other general comments or questions on Outlook rules? Again, if you need, if you would like to dig into it further, if you would ask on your production call, that person who supports you would be able to step you through it specifically and look at some ideas and examples that are specific to your practice.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Have you found, Carla Doss, that when the advisor puts his out of office on then, so when he's not in the office and he has to enable that, that the rules affect his out of office and how it works? Because we experienced that here in our office, so we did away with rules, but they were a little bit different than the way you're using them. But I was just curious, have you found that his out of office does not work when you have these rules in place?
I can't answer to that because we have never, honestly, Steve rarely goes anywhere. He's the type of person that can't leave the area very often, very long, and we don't use out of office when he does because I still have all of his email. I still see his inbox within my Outlook as well.
Okay.
So we've never used out of office, but I do have them set up to come straight to the person and go immediately to his delete folder, so he doesn't see them at all. I don't know how that would affect that.
Okay, and I was just curious.
And yeah, I want to speak on the delete folder idea. But I wanted to first, Ellen, see if anybody else has any feedback for you. Has anybody else used Outlook rules and run into a hiccup with it when the advisor has their email on out of office? Or or found that you don't have any problem at all? All right. No takers. I guess nobody else has run into that from a positive or negative, Ellen. So I'm not sure.
Okay.
Dawn and Brandy might have more. Dawn and/or Brandy might have more input on that. If you want to check with them and see if they've run into anything like that. So
okay. Thank you.
And sure. As far as setting up the Outlook rules, and Carla, I'm not trying to throw you under the bus here with your comment about deleting them, but as far as our best practice recommendation, we suggest that they not be deleted. There may be certain scenarios, and the way Steve functions, it may make total sense to do it that way, but for the most part across the board, it's best not to delete the email. It's better to set up a folder that's maybe an action needed folder or a forwarded email folder or something. And then that way they're there for a while, and if the advisor chooses to go in and look at what has come in, they still have them and then can choose to delete them from there. So we just basically recommend throwing in that extra step of moving it to some other folder in Outlook and then the advisor having to choose to delete it. So that's just so the advisor's eyes see it at some point. All right. As far as best practice resources, there are a couple of them on Turnkey Solutions, and you can see the path here. Both of them are in the client experience folder and then drilled down within that in the number 6 meeting follow-up folder. And there is a preferences document, and on that it basically notates which team member is responsible for each step, and I'm going to show you just a sampling of that here in a minute. And then the other one is the workflow, and most all of you have seen that as well, and it is basically a flow chart that shows how the steps flow from one to the next. So here's a sampling of the preferences document. So, you know, who's completing the meeting notes, and the box just gets checked for who it is that's doing that step, who marks them done, so on and so forth. And then the workflow says, okay, in this case, maybe the advisor completes the trades and does the meeting notes and, you know, then passes them on to the BP, business processor, who then sends them on to the administrator, you know, and so on and so forth. So if you're not familiar with the workflow for your practice, I would recommend looking in that folder on Connect, on your site rather. So the basic document is on Turnkey Solutions, but you can also each go into your site to see if it has specifically been adjusted and uploaded for your team. And it would be the same path. It would just be on your site and then the client experience folder and the number 6 meeting follow-up folder. So if you go that path on your site, if you're unsure if you have that and you go and look there and you don't find it, you could bring that up on your production call too, or in your team meeting to say, hey, we want to make sure ours shows accurately, and so if we have anybody new come on board, we've got it down pat of what our preferences are and what our workflow is. All right, I wanted to open it up now for group discussion. I've just put some sample type questions and thoughts on here, just related topics to the meeting follow-up process in case somebody was wondering about any of these or wanted to share something about it. So if any of you want to choose from any of these and ask them to the group, please feel free, or if you have some questions that have come to mind for yourself that aren't in this list, please feel free to shout those out.
I can, on the presentation from your computer, I'm still seeing Outlook rule poll. I'm not sure if anybody else is.
Oh, goodness. Thank you. Sorry about that. Thanks. That's my technology self going on there. Any group discussion or questions, any comments anybody wanted to make or questions to ask? All righty. Well, I appreciate everybody's time today. And any questions for Carla Doss or one another at all?